Well, Albert, thank you so much for helping with my project. Could you say a little bit about yourself?
Right. My name is Albert, and I am a space architect. So I have a background in architecture, and I specialized in space architecture, which lots of people haven't heard about. So I'm gonna like quickly define like the traditional or the existing definition of space architecture is the theory and practice of building and designing human habitats in extreme environments or off-world in outer space. So that's where I come from, and being a space architect, I I look at things from a like a holistic point of view, and I like to change scales like from the minuscule to the macro. So I like to approach subjects that way, and it's interesting to be able to talk to you today about some of these things.
Yeah, as you were talking about the micro to the macro, I
Right.
couldn't help but think about like an oak tree. On one hand, you have like these little bitty cells that in and of themselves aren't all that interesting, but then
Mm-hmm.
you have like this huge kind of structure that's
Mm-hmm.
like strong that people build like tire swings from and tree houses on that the birds come and build nest and the squirrels run around and get the nuts from, and it's like has roots into like the ground that strengthen it and even
Yeah.
move like buildings and sidewalks, and
Yeah.
it's like sucking up resources from the air and from the ground and just growing and reproducing. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I was just wondering, like, when you talk about the micro versus the macro, is that sort of like the thinking that you're thinking, or is it something different?
No, it definitely that's a very good example, and it spans my entire like outlook towards life. To be honest, whenever I approach anything, I want um, to be able to perceive it at different scales, and that helps me understand it at a deeper level, I would think. And yeah, the example that you kind of talked about is really interesting, and I can only imagine um, during the talks that you've had, which is really interesting, by the way, like one person a day until 2024. I can only imagine the number of people you've talked to and the amount of information you must have gathered. That's like really interesting.
Yeah, it's been amazing. I mean, there's like 7 billion humans on the earth, all with like different experiences and knowledge and ways of thinking.
Hmm.
And how few of them do we actually know? I mean, it's just like, I mean, you may have like so many people on like Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn, but in terms of just having a basic conversation with them, I found before starting this project that I knew very little about um, other people. But through this project, I've not so much learned about other people as much, but I learned how ignorant I was about other people.
Yeah, for sure. Like we are inherently limited by our like our circles, like our academic circles, our social circles. That's why, like traveling, they say traveling is the best teacher. Travel is the best teacher, and that's something that I live by.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's amazing how much of our daily experience we just assume is normal. And
Hmm.
then you go someplace else and you're like, where's this or that? And they have no clue what you're talking about. And that was part of your daily existence. And, you know, I guess it could go one of two ways. Either you have that epiphany where you're like, oh, normal isn't universal.
Yeah, yeah. I was born and raised in India, and I've been in the U.S. for a couple of years, almost 2 years now. And as far as I'm concerned, it's been like someone flipped my world upside down. It's like the social, the cultural differences, everything has been so different, and that's partly why I wanted to come to the US. um, one for like studying space architecture and see where that leads me to, and also for living, experiencing a different way of life, you know.
Yeah, I actually have sort of a related experience. My wife is Indian, and her parents live with me.
Cool.
So we're in the U.S., but we have a lot of um, Indian influences in our household. You know, the food and some
Awesome.
rituals and some other things like that. So I'm constantly learning more, and it constantly keeps it fresh in my mind. Uh, that there's very differences in terms of how people approach life and everything.
Yeah, Indian food, you got one good thing going over there.
Indeed. Um, so back in India, did you have a passion for space architecture? And then it kind of, I mean, like, what's your journey like?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question because it's a very interesting one for me personally, at least. Uh, when I was in architecture school, I was hesitant to sort of go into the traditional architecture field. Couple of reasons. One reason is it was my thinking that the the field of architecture is already saturated, and by that I mean there's a lot of good architects doing good work, and all that. So I was looking for avenues to apply myself where it'd be one easier to make a mark, easier to do something um, of weight, of gravity, and that was when I was looking at different things to do. Space architecture came up because one of my seniors uh, had done the same program in the University of Houston, um, and uh, and yeah, ever since that day, I was like, contemplating moving to this field. And after graduating my undergrad, so I worked as an architect for 2 years back at home, and finally I applied, and I thankfully I got the admission, and the rest is history, I suppose, over here.
That's awesome. Oh, where are you currently going to school?
I've already graduated. I went to school in University of Houston. Um, in the engineering department, we have what's called the SIGSA, so Sasakawa Institute, I mean International Center for Space Architecture. So that's where we had our Master of Science in Space Architecture program, which is um, the only one of its kind in the world. So like there was nowhere else to go if I wanted to do this. So it's been a really interesting journey. Some other programs um, adjacent to it, like International Space University in France, offer like space studies programs, but none. But this one in particular, it focuses on uh, space architecture, designing habitats. Like if you're an architect, I this is my perception of it. If you come in as an architect, you learn how to be an engineer, and if you come in as an engineer, you learn how to be think like an architect, and so on. You can be a physicist, you can be a business major, whatever. You come in here, and then it's a very intercultural, interdisciplinary program, and it's been a joy.
It's always been a challenge for me to really kind of define architecture. From the outside, as a non-architect, I mean, it looks like some type of combination of art and engineering, and dealing specifically with like human factors and the human interaction with like living spaces.
Mhm.
And I was wondering how your definition might be looking at it from the inside.
Yeah, you pretty much got it spot on. You pretty much touched on the major things. It is a meeting point of science and art. It is based on human factors. It's a human-centered design approach, So it's it's interesting, like the parallels between architecture and space architecture, if I can bring it up here. So in architecture, we always talk about site, which is the where, the program, which is the what we're building, and the why, which is the reason why we're doing it in architecture. And so that translates very well into space architecture also, where if we're going to the moon, for example, the site, we're gonna have to choose a landing site. We're gonna have to choose a site which makes it very as easy as possible, I would say, for to achieve our objectives, right? And that's the site. And the what is the plan, that what are we doing over there? Are we going there to do science experiments? Are we going there um, to do, let's say, let me rewind a little bit over here and kind of expand on this, because there's a space architect called Brent Sherwood who has been working in NASA for so many years, and he's now in Blue Origin. Now I like how he frames this topic about what we are going to do on the moon. Like all our um, human projects come under these four categories, right? The first category is to explore. The second category is um, to experiment. The third, if I'm not mistaken, the third is to experience, and the fourth is to settle. So in the first, we're going to do scientific explorations, basically. The second is exploitation. That's the one I was looking for, which is basically mining for resources and whatnot. The third is to experience, which you would do as a space tourist, to experience the place. And the fourth is to settle finally. And so that's kind of interesting for me to look at through this lens, what we are going to the moon to do. And yeah, that's kind of the what we're going to the moon, and also the why. And so yeah, in a nutshell, that's how I kind of look at the upcoming Artemis missions.
That is, and so I guess coming to Artemis, when did you find out that we were planning to send people to the moon in 2024?
It was when I first came to the US, and I was doing my master's. I believe that was when I first like found out. So it was back in 2018.
Okay, it sounds like very close to the time that they announced it, probably,
Mhm.
maybe even that day.
Maybe.
Would it surprise you that most people don't know we're planning to send people back to the moon in 2024?
No, it's not surprising. I mean, today in today's climate, I can see that lots of people are not engaged in the space sector, which me being in the space sector, I would love to change. So it doesn't surprise me, but it's a little sad.
You know, I was just thinking in terms of space architecture that we would need on the moon and that would also have some use here on Earth.
Mhm.
Being able to have sort of like these very lightweight kind of inflatable environments that provide complete like air and temperature isolation from inside versus outside and maintain a good breathing environment inside.
Mhm.
I mean, I could see that as being kind of like really useful here
Yeah.
on Earth. You know, I mean,
Mhm.
especially like here in Houston, for example. Are you still in Houston?
I am.
Oh, okay. You should come to the North Houston Space Society sometime whenever we have our meetings again.
I would love to.
Um, but I was thinking, especially like over there by the Pasadena area, you know,
Mhm.
being able to have like a blow up pop-up facility that you can go into and have safe, clean breathing environment with an airlock
Mhm.
could be a lifesaver for people around those chemical plants.
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, I've never thought about it that way. It's very interesting. Um, similar thinkings have been in place earlier, like disaster mitigation, like if there's an earthquake, for example, how do you deploy um, quickly like habitats for for people who are suffering, so that's one way of people have thought about like incorporating space architecture like in a day-to-day basis, like on a terrestrial basis. But yeah, it's interesting to see how much we can take the applications to. Yeah, for sure.
Because I was thinking in terms of public engagement, I really feel like they need to have a physical interaction with this technology for it to have any impact. And I
Mm-hmm.
was kind of imagining, after this COVID thing, we put one of these pop-up things in the mall and, make it so that like there's like portals you can look out, but you feel like you're on the moon. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, this is what your house will look like on the moon.
Yeah,
And people could walk in and they have to go through the airlock and this artificial breathing environment be like kind of
that's
neat.
true. That'd be real cool to see. I'm also very interested in the field of like virtual reality and augmented reality, and to see, just to kind of jump on what you said, like to incorporate it with virtual reality and augmented reality would be even more awesome, I think.
Yeah. I was just I feel like space architecture and these like lunar habitats is like an area that people with very little money can make big contributions in. I mean, like you don't need to have, millions of dollars to build a rocket, right? I mean, you could creating a self-enclosed environment, you just go get the supplies, put it someplace, build it, test it, well, what have you. I mean, it seems like a big opportunity for people who would like to make a contribution in terms of us going out into the rest of the solar systems could actually contribute.
Yeah, it's interesting because right now I would say right now it's very cost prohibitive in the sense that it does cost millions of dollars to make a rocket. It does cost millions of dollars to research in the R&D. But you're right, we don't need money in the sense that we can contribute in a lot of other ways apart from just money. We can contribute in terms of intellectual um, advice or intellectual proceedings, by studying aerospace engineering, architecture, whatever. Or very soon there'll be um, space programs which will need test subjects, for example. you know so I'm also thinking about it in that way, in the future, like how can we expand the participation of the layman into this field. And right now it's difficult, but in the near future, I see it happening definitely. um, yeah, so it's quite an interesting time to be alive in.
I feel like in terms of space architecture, our daily lives should be part of an experiment to try to test out uh, various future environments. I mean, it's like uh,
Yeah,
I mean, I feel like you and I um, could be living in future space environments here on Earth, kind of providing data in terms of what actually works and what doesn't. And
yeah, there's a show going on right now. I think it's called Moonbase, where John C. Riley, he's living in this what we call an analog test project, where they are essentially simulating what living on the moon could be like in the middle of the desert. uh, and so that's happening right now all over the world. There's like analog projects in Iceland. There's two dudes who are like living um, inside a shell, inside a habitat they designed for like 3 months. There's things happening in Hawaii. There's things happening in the Utah desert. There's things happening in Antarctica. So there's a lot of cool things happening.
yeah, really, really neat. And also the like this concept of trying to make sure that you keep a good separation between inside the habitat and outside the habitat, while at
Mm-hmm.
the same time being able to quickly make the transition between the two. I
Mm-hmm.
I like NASA has that rover where the astronaut suits are like have like the back
Mm-hmm.
thing, and they climb in through the back, and like the
Right.
suits are always on the outside of the rover, but I think that's
Yeah.
kind of a neat design.
Yeah, it's very neat, and it solves a very big problem, which is when you go to the moon, the lunar dust is going to be a very big pain in the backside, you know. And so, with that design, we are minimizing the entry of dust into our living spaces. So um, you're always in an environment which is dust free. And so that's one of the interesting things that I see, that particular design of the spacesuit brings. And yeah, with apart from the spacesuit, everything that we put on the moon, like rovers, for example, they need to roll. They need to have motors, which again need to be dust proof. The lunar dust, as I'm sure you must be aware by now, is very can be very sticky and it's very abrasive. So how do we mitigate like lunar dust getting into our electric motors? How do we expand our um, the life cycle of our things on the moon, you know? So that's kind of some problems that we are trying to solve right now, and it's interesting to see.
So what do you think about a return to the moon in 2024? Um, Good idea, bad idea, too early, too late?
Definitely a good idea. A better idea than going to Mars for sure. Because I approach I approach this as from a strategic planning, strategic thinking point of view. And by that I mean um, it's going to the moon in 2024. It's a step. It's a very profound and interesting step, um, with steps, equally important steps before it and equally important steps after it, you know. And so I see it as a roadmap. It's part of a roadmap towards Mars and beyond. Artemis 1, for example, is going to, much like how we did Apollo, Artemis 1 will be just a demonstration of our hardware. Like if the Orion space capsule, which is going to take the people on the moon, if it can function in deep space, and if it can handle the intense heat, the intense pressures of re-entering Earth or atmosphere. So that's all going to be tested in Artemis 1, which I believe is slated to happen in November 2021. So a little less than a year from now. So if anyone's watching this in 50 years, please let us know how it happened. Artemis 2 um, is going to be a uh, human program, but it will not land on the moon. It's going to test like the communication systems and how everything functions with a human being on board. And so finally, that's going to be, I think, in September or August 2023. So about a year before, sometime before 2024, when we first land the human beings, first land humans on the moon again in the 21st century. So yeah, that's like kind of the precursors. But another interesting aspect is what happens after Artemis 3, which is going to land humans on the moon. With Artemis 4, which will introduce things like rovers on the moon, which Artemis 3 won't have. Artemis 3 will only allow the humans or the astronauts to walk, to explore their surroundings by their spacesuit. But Artemis 4 will have a rover and so on, like how we build like a permanent human settlement or a colony. That's what we're all going for. I mean, that's what Artemis is going for right now, like how to sustainably uh, enhance our presence on the moon. And after the moon, how do we go to Mars next? How do we go to Titan next? And after the solar system, go outside the solar system. So all very interesting things to look forward to.
It is. And not everybody is excited about our return to the moon. Some people are like, we have issues down here on Earth, poverty, global climate change, war, the pandemic, minor things. Um, and how do you justify for them us going to the moon? I mean, it seems like they make a valid point, but um, how do you have that conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I've had this conversation a lot of times. Every time I give a slightly different answer because my answer, to be honest, is evolving. Um, this is how I'll answer it today. I see it's being there are the most important thing that is in our life today is our difference. I mean our difference in our attitude towards life, right? So I am here talking about space. Someone else is over there handling the pandemic. Um, and to me, that's the beauty. Like everyone um, has a different objective or has a different view towards life. And uh, to be uh, even in a time even in a difficult time like this, I think to look towards the stars is like giving hope in a certain way to everyone, so everyone uh, is not focused on surviving, but we are it's more of giving hope or looking at our existence in a larger scale, trying to, or you can also try to look at it in this way, like with space exploration, we are trying to expand our our presence in the universe, and so if we become a multiplanetary species, then we minimize our risk of having a catastrophic failure as a species, So that's kind of the few ways I kind of approach this topic. um, yeah, we all need to be doing our own things. Everyone's function is not less important than the other, and so yeah, that's kind of how I approach it.
And I've talked to a number of other people about the idea of having colonies in space and space exploration, and we kind of talked about, even though very few people actually ever go to space or go to these colonies, just kind of knowing that there are people doing it and that it's a possibility to do it yourself, even though it may be very difficult and unlikely, might actually offer some type of mental or social like safety valve that
Hmm.
kind of um, you're like, okay, I realize I'm down here on Earth doing my thing, but I could go to space if I wanted to, and maybe that somehow alleviates or makes your situation better. And I was wondering what you thought about that thought.
Yeah, that's a good way of thinking. I mean, I agree. That's something I personally have been thinking about it also. I just haven't been able to put it into words. And yeah, thank you for putting it into words.
Oh, it's definitely been a community effort. Each conversation I have, I pick up a little bit more, or see something slightly different, or try something out. And anyway, um,
Mm.
but I guess along those lines, oh, if it was safe and affordable, would you go into space?
Yeah, definitely, for
Like
sure.
suborbital, or you would go to the ISS, or would you go to the moon for a week, or would you immigrate to Mars? Like, how far would you go?
Depends what year we're talking about. If we're talking about this year, I'd go suborbital for sure. um, I the way I see it, it's um, right now the limit or how we're comfortable with the human presence is basically low Earth orbit right now. Anything apart from that, we are unsure. Um, I mean, by that I mean there's a lot more, exponentially, a lot more challenges to tackle. And so the good thing about this, what's happening right now with the Artemis missions is essentially we are expanding rather our safety net. You know, we're expanding our comfort zone. So instead of the low Earth orbit as our safety zone or comfortable zone, now we are going into cislunar space, or we are approaching that. We're going towards it. Um, and so by the time we have the lunar gateway in orbit around the moon, we can do so much experiments. You know, we can be more comfortable of enhanced long-term human presence outside the Earth's cocoon, the Earth's outside the Earth protecting us. And so that can keep on growing and growing. Eventually, the solar system becomes our safe zone or whatever. But for me personally, in order to reach that, there's one thing that we have to do amongst a lot of other things. But one thing that we cannot like skip on is study the effects, the long-term effects of partial gravity, what it does to the human body. You know, so if we are living on the moon for 1 month, 1 year, 10 years, what does it do to our human body? If we're living on Mars for a month, year, what does it do? Which are questions we are asking, but we don't have the answers to right now. And so that's one thing that I think we should try to get the answers to, if we are to have, you know, long-term presence on off worlds.
And then, you know, if it turns out that it's not good, the other question is, can you take like centrifugal doses where you have like a little portable centrifuge that you work in for a few hours or sleep in?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe at night everybody just sleeps in like the spinning thing, and they're just like they get the gravity effect.
Yeah, that was actually my master's thesis project. You know, where I proposed a like a spinning test bed. So it'll be a research platform in low Earth orbit, but it will be, so the intent will be to eventually produce an experiment, a long-term like research platform where we can study what happens in extended periods of partial gravity. But my master's thesis was, so I look at everything, I try to break down things into steps. And so my master's thesis was a step towards that. And so it was a test bed, which puts us on the path to having spinning bodies in low Earth orbit, you know. And so yeah, that's, I believe I'm playing my part in like us as a human species moving towards that direction.
And how far did you get with it? Did you just basically create a drawing or a concept or like a computer simulation, or did you actually build some hardware?
It was a computer simulation. We did some calculations, like what kind of, so in a nutshell, what I want to do is use the space dragons, the Crew Dragons, as two as two laboratories, in fact, and I want to spin them up. So we did some calculations on how much it can last, how long it can support functions. We did like ConOps, what we call ConOps in space architecture, which is the concept of operations. What does it mean? Like how it will be assembled, how it will dock to the International Space Station, how it will undock, how it will perform its things, experiments, and so on. And so yeah, we did some things like that. The next step would be to hopefully build a prototype get something rolling.
Yeah, I think with like multiple dragons, it'd be difficult to do that on the Earth, right? With the
Yeah, the problem with Earth is that you can never generate true partial gravity. It will always be adulterated by Earth's own vector, the gravity vector. And so we have to, if we want to generate true partial gravity, we have to move at least to Leo. And Leo is like really good right now because it's on the verge of commercialization. And so there's a lot of economic like possibilities to kind of piggyback on, you know.
yeah, that's true. Um, so I've been struggling with my profession is in software related things, and I've often kind of thought about trying to do something in the space related things, and I've talked to a number of people about various options. But I was wondering, if you were providing career counseling to somebody on whether or not to do the space architecture, who do you think would be a good fit for it?
Well, it's difficult to answer that one. Well, anyone who's interested, I would say. It's difficult to really point a finger on like who can be a good one, but like very generally speaking, if someone is interested in futurism, um, if someone has an outlook towards life um, which I would say combines both an engineering mindset. You have to be very technical in your approach, as well as have creative freedom. So if you that's like the ultimate or the ideal condition, in my opinion, for someone to be in space architecture, at least, to be able to have a balance between your technical side and your artistic, or the more like holistic view of things, you know. So that's a good way to kind of approach space architecture.
That that makes sense. I guess after you got your degree, what do you see as being sort of the next thing that you would be doing? Would it be research, or would you go work for like Blue Origin or SpaceX or some other company, or kind of, what do you? Uh, I mean, what are the options?
Right now, I'm working for a company called Precursor Technologies. We're doing like projects, lunar projects and stuff. I do in my future plan to do a PhD sometime. As far as working for Blue Origin, SpaceX, that's unfortunately out of the realm of possibility for me because as a non-U.S. citizen right now, it's the work in the aerospace field is governed by ITAR, which is the International Traffic of Arms Regulations, I believe, and so essentially non-U.S. citizens cannot participate in projects like Blue Origin or SpaceX, you know. But having said that, I see that's one of the obstacles that I see for people who are not U.S. citizens. The U.S. is the place as far as space architecture is concerned. If you want to do anything in human space flight, there's none a better place. But if you are non-US citizens, it's extremely difficult for you to get jobs in this field right now. But in the future, I have like hopes for it that this sort of regulation will ease. It doesn't make too much sense in my opinion right now. Its regulations they came into being for a purpose, but some unfortunately just go out of relevance, you know, and some can be killed.
Well, I think it's interesting, like Rocket Labs is actually a New Zealand company.
Mhm.
And, I had no idea that there would be the possibility of having a private orbital capability from New Zealand. That shocked
Yeah,
me.
it's
Um,
awesome.
uh, so I think it kind of goes to show that um, it is possible to actually create space companies in uh, considerably smaller countries,
Hmm.
at least.
Yeah, and even like the other side of the world, which we're not talking about, which is China. Like China has like a very big space program, which is like so disconnected from what's happening in our lives, And so when if we are able to merge what's happening in China, what's happening in India, what's happening here in Europe, I believe that would be a much better future that we can look forward to, rather than like our kind of segregated um, like space efforts, which I admit has its own benefits, having segregated space efforts, but all things considered, I believe it'd be much better if we all come together as one.
What do you think is the biggest challenge to keep that from happening?
Um, Politics, I suppose, which is out of my scope. I'm not a really political person, and yeah, I guess from what I see, politics is like the geopolitics. Politics is that's the main kind of hurdle.
I think there's also another kind of related challenge I see is trust. Being able to kind of create trust along those types of relationships that you're not going to be taken advantage of and
Mhm.
what have you. Mm.
Yeah, that's trust is what's kind of like upholding this ITAR regulations I talked about a bit earlier. Like basically the people are not trusting other people to not to like go and make like weapons, for example, from the things that you learn in the aerospace industry. And so yeah, trust is a big thing. Um, if we overcome that, like I said, I think it'll be a better world.
Well, Albert, I really appreciate your time. Is there anything else that you want to talk about that we didn't get to?
Um, I guess not. I can't think of anything at the moment. Yeah, we've talked about a lot of interesting, cool things. Um, yeah.
Well, I hope. Well, I mean, one other thing is, you said you came from India, so you're
Hmm.
an Indian citizen, correct?
Correct.
How about ISRO, um, the Indian Space Agency? I understand they're planning to send people into space. I don't think it was fully funded, but I think they're still planning to. I was wondering what kind of opportunities do you see in that direction?
Yeah, the ISRO recently they announced their human spaceflight program, which is good news, which is going in the right direction. It's however in the very early stages. I hope I can make a contribution to that sometime in the future. Definitely. Um, Whatever like I'm doing right now, I think is like preparing me to be able to make a contribution over there too. Um, if anything comes up there, I'd be happy to do that. Like a stint in ISRO.
Well, that would be neat. Well,
Mhm.
thank you so much, Albert. I look forward to staying in touch, and um, maybe there's an opportunity to do some type of outreach, research type of collaboration here in Houston.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Yeah, it was amazing talking to you. I wish you best of luck. This is like a very interesting endeavor you're on. Like until 2024, I hope like you learn much more and share much more to the rest of us to be able to view.
Will do. Well, you have a good rest of your day, and talk to you later.
Thank you. You too.